Ever wondered if you could be related to someone really powerful from history?
Hmm.
Well, you might be surprised to learn that if you have Icelandic roots, you could be descended from John Arason,
Oh, wow.
last Catholic bishop of Iceland.
Wow.
His life story is really incredible, full of ambition and religious clashes, a real fight against the changing times. So today we're taking a deep dive into his world.
Yeah.
We'll be uncovering what his legacy tells us about the power dynamics back then.
John Arison's story is so fascinating because it unfolds during the Protestant Reformation,
Right.
this period of huge religious and political upheaval across Europe.
Yeah.
And Iceland, being under Danish rule at the time, was right in the middle of it all.
To understand John Arason, we need to go back to his origins.
Okay.
Even his birth year is a bit of a mystery.
Oh, really?
Most sources say 1484,
Yeah.
but some suggest it could have been a decade earlier.
Huh. That's interesting. This discrepancy really raises questions about how quickly he rose through the church. If he was born in 1474, it wouldn't be quite as remarkable.
Right.
It's almost as if they're trying to downplay his youth
Yeah.
and the unusual way he came to power.
Unconventional is definitely an understatement.
Yeah.
He had 9 children with Helga Sigurdsdóttir
Wow.
while he was a priest.
Okay.
Not exactly typical behavior for a man
Yeah.
of cloth.
Right, yeah. It makes you wonder what life was really like back then in Iceland.
I know.
I mean, it was the early 16th century.
Right.
Iceland was a very different place. Clerical celibacy wasn't really strictly enforced.
Okay.
So John Arison's lifestyle wasn't seen as that scandalous. And his family background plays a role, too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, even his father was the son of a monastic prior.
So he comes from a family where the lines between the church and family were a bit blurred.
Exactly.
It's like he inherited a system that helped him gain wealth and influence. Kind of like a powerful chieftain of the time.
Absolutely. And all that power led to some serious rivalries.
Yeah.
His feud with Bishop Ögmundur Pálsson, who controlled the southern diocese, was legendary.
Wow.
They even faced off at the Althing,
Okay.
Iceland's parliament.
Now, the Althing might be a new term for some listeners.
Yeah.
It's basically Iceland's parliament.
Right.
A tradition of democratic governance that dates back to the Vikings.
Wow.
Can you imagine the tension with these two powerful bishops and their armies basically squaring off?
Oh, yeah. This clash shows how deeply religion and politics were intertwined in Iceland back then.
Yeah.
But this was just a taste of the conflict that was to come.
Right.
When the Protestant Reformation arrived in Iceland, it threw everything into chaos.
And it was King Christian III of Denmark, a staunch Lutheran,
Yeah.
who was determined to enforce religious uniformity across his realm,
Right.
including Iceland. What does that mean for John Arason and the established Catholic Church?
Well, the king's people in Iceland, they didn't waste any time.
Yeah.
They started attacking monasteries, seizing church property, and trying to impose this new Lutheran order.
Yeah.
And this obviously sparked fierce resistance.
Okay.
The Althing, representing the Icelandic people, rejected the king's demands. It shows just how closely tied their beliefs were to their ideas of national identity and autonomy.
So you have John Arason, this powerful bishop who was used to getting his way.
Right.
Now he's caught in the middle of this power struggle between the Danish crown and the Icelandic people.
Yeah.
How did he initially respond to this growing Lutheran presence?
Well, at first, John Arason seemed open to coexisting peacefully
Okay.
with the Lutheran South.
Yeah.
But then a pivotal event happened in 1548 that changed everything. The death of Bishop Gissur Einarsson.
Okay.
He was appointed to lead that newly established Lutheran diocese in the South.
It sounds like Gissur's death was a real turning point.
Yeah.
What happened after that?
Well, John Arason saw this as an opportunity to bring back Catholicism in the South. He even went as far as appointing a new Catholic bishop,
Really?
reconsecrating churches that had been converted.
Wow.
And he even exhumed Gisur's body
Way.
and declared him a heretic.
That's a huge escalation.
Right.
He went from trying to keep the peace to actively challenging the whole system.
Yeah.
What was he thinking?
Well, it seems that Gisur's death really reignited John Arason's fervor. Don't forget, he had the backing of the Pope.
Right.
He truly saw himself as the defender of the true faith in Iceland, believed he had divine authority on his side. Yeah.
It sounds like that conviction, that belief in his divine authority, really sets the stage for the final act of John Arison's life.
It does, yeah.
What were the consequences of all of this?
Well, his actions were considered treasonous by the Danish king,
Yeah.
who issued a warrant for his arrest.
Okay.
And that's where things get really interesting.
So John Arison, who once had so much power and influence, now he finds himself a fugitive.
Yeah.
What happened next?
John Arison and two of his sons, they were tricked into a meeting.
Oh, wow.
They thought they were going to negotiate a settlement.
Okay.
Instead, they were captured.
Wow, that's a shocking betrayal. How did people react to this?
Well, everyone expected them to be held for trial at the next thing.
Right.
But before that could happen, John Arison and his sons were executed.
That must have been a huge shock to Iceland.
Yeah.
To execute a powerful bishop and his sons without a trial? That's brutal.
It really was.
Yeah.
And John Arison's final words after that third blow of the axe, they were spoken in Latin. "Into your hands, Lord, I commend my spirit."
Those words are really haunting. From a powerful bishop to a condemned man.
Yeah.
It really shows you how quickly things can change.
It does. And those words resonated throughout Iceland. John Arison transformed from this controversial figure to a martyr. His execution caused outrage, especially in the north,
Right.
where he was deeply respected.
Yeah.
His supporters, they rose up, attacked Danish officials, and reaffirmed their loyalty to Catholicism.
So even in death, he became a symbol. A symbol for those who opposed Danish rule.
Absolutely.
And the forced imposition of Lutheranism. It seems his influence went way beyond the church. He was also a smart political player.
Yeah.
And a devoted family man.
For sure. He was a master at making alliances.
Yeah.
And getting his family into powerful positions. He arranged big marriages for his daughters and actively promoted his sons' careers. Even got accused of nepotism sometimes.
Yeah, it sounds like he knew how to work the system.
He did, yeah.
Both in the church and in the wider political landscape.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile those two sides of John Arison,
Yeah.
the wealthy, ambitious bishop,
Right.
and John Arison the martyr, the symbol of Icelandic resistance?
Well, that's something historians still debate today.
Yeah.
Was he driven by his faith, a desire to protect his wealth and power?
Right.
Or maybe a longing for Icelandic independence from Danish rule?
Or all of those things.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's a complicated legacy.
It is, yeah.
But the fact that he's still celebrated as a national hero, even though most of Iceland is Lutheran now,
Yeah.
it really says something.
It does. It speaks to how powerful his story is as a symbol of resistance against foreign rule. Remember, Iceland didn't achieve full independence from Denmark until 1944.
Right.
So for centuries, John Arison's defiance resonated with Icelanders, especially those who wanted self-determination.
And then there's that saying that all Icelanders are descended from John Arison.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is, and it could actually be true. Iceland had a pretty small population in the 16th century.
Yeah.
So statistically, it's possible many Icelanders today can trace their ancestry back to him.
So he's almost like a mythical figure now, a shared ancestor who represents both the triumphs and the tragedies of Icelandic history.
And it's a history marked by this really interesting tension
Yeah.
between John Arison's Catholic faith
Okay.
and the Lutheranism that eventually took over.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of that? It's a great question. How can someone who fought so hard for one faith become a symbol for a nation where that faith is now a minority?
I think it's important to remember that how people see religion can change over time.
Right.
While John Arison fought to keep Catholicism alive, his defiance against Danish authority resonated with those who became Lutheran too.
So his legacy became about more than just religious beliefs.
That's exactly.
It became about national pride and cultural identity.
Exactly. And that's why his story still fascinates us today. It gives us a glimpse into a very turbulent period
Yeah.
when religious beliefs were so closely tied to political power,
Right.
personal ambition, and the fight for national self-determination.
It also makes you think about how we remember the past and how we understand it.
Yeah.
Whose stories do we tell? Whose voices are heard?
Right.
And how do those stories shape who we think we are as people?
Those are good questions to think about. As we wrap up our deep dive into the life of John Arison, I encourage you to consider how his legacy, complex as it is, continues to shake Iceland today.
And what lessons can we take from his story about the power of faith,
Yeah.
the complexities of ambition,
Right.
and the cost of fighting against oppression? It's a story that makes you think.
Yeah.
even long after you've heard it,
It does.
about the things that shape our world
Hmm.
and the people who dare to challenge the way things are, no matter what the cost.
John Arison's story reminds us that history isn't just about facts and dates.
Right.
It's made up of people's lives
Yeah.
and the choices they made,
Right.
which continue to influence the world we live in.
So we've covered a lot today,
We have, yeah.
from John Arison's rise to power to his tragic end and the lasting impact he had. Yeah, it's amazing to think about how much of an impact this bishop from the 1500s still has on Iceland today.
I know, right? It really shows you the power of his story. He wasn't just a historical figure. He became this symbol.
Yeah. And symbols can be incredibly powerful,
They can.
especially when they embody ideas like resistance, faith, and the struggle for autonomy.
Absolutely. Just think about the image of his body and his sons being carried back to Haller, his home diocese, after they were executed.
It must have been a pretty somber procession.
It was.
A stark reminder of what they had to pay for standing up for what they believed in.
Yeah. There are even accounts that the largest bell at the Haller Cathedral cracked during the funeral,
Wow.
almost like it couldn't handle the weight of the loss.
That's chilling. Like the land itself was mourning their deaths.
Yeah.
Must have really added to the outrage among his supporters.
Oh, yeah, definitely. His daughter, Horan, even put together a force that marched on Skalholt,
Wow.
the seat of that southern diocese. They were looking for revenge against the Danish officials.
That shows you just how much loyalty he inspired. His story had such a big impact on Iceland, both back then and for centuries after.
It really did. It makes you think about how complex history is and how people's lives can be intertwined with these massive forces of change.
It makes you wonder, if you were living in Iceland back then, what would you have done?
Right.
Would you have supported John Arason and the old faith?
Yeah.
Or would you have embraced the new order from the Danish king?
Tough choices. That's what's so great about history, though. It challenges you to think critically about the past, to grapple with things that aren't so clear-cut, and to realize that even the biggest events often have many different perspectives.
And John Arason is a perfect example of that. He was full of contradictions.
He was, yeah.
A powerful bishop who defied his king,
Yeah.
a loving father who used his power to help his family, a dedicated Catholic who became a symbol for a nation that eventually became Lutheran.
He was all those things. And his story also reminds us that history isn't just about kings and queens and battles.
Right.
It's about regular people.
Yeah.
People caught up in these huge changes who make choices that have ripple effects for years to come. Their stories shape how we understand the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this. What stands out to you most about John Arison's story? Is it his faith, his fight against depression,
Yeah.
or the impact he left behind?
It's interesting to think about. Whatever it is, we hope you keep exploring,
Yes.
keep questioning, and keep uncovering those hidden stories that connect us all.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the life and times of John Arison, Iceland's last Catholic bishop. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into history.
I did.
We did.
Be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more fascinating explorations of the past.
And until next time, keep jiving.